What's up, YouTube? Hey, how's it going? Happy Mercury Day. It's Wednesday, the day that I'm recording this, and Wednesday is the day of Mercury, the day of communication, and so I'm opening up my voice and we're going to be sharing. I have been recording videos on YouTube for like 6 years now, on and off. I've never really gotten too consistent with it because the editing of the videos and even like, the thumbnails, I'm trying to do thumbnails consistently, but like the editing and like the planning out and the scripting, it's just been a bit too much for me. I really appreciate how creators on YouTube create these beautiful videos, but I feel like for me, going just like talking like this is more in alignment with my lifestyle, my schedule, and even just like my skill level. Like, I can edit videos, but it takes a lot for me to do. So a friend of mine highly encouraged that I just start recording content again and getting my voice out there. And I was born during a time where sharing my voice and sharing my perspective, it is almost a requirement of me being alive. I feel like I'm not fulfilling my purpose when I don't. So giving thanks to these apps and to these platforms where I can do this, because I'm not in community like I was in years prior. I'm spending more time in self-development and with my family, preteen years of child raising, and so I'm going to be doing more of this, just these candid opportunities, candid conversations where I can just sit down and give you guys my perspective. If you enjoy this conversation and you want to learn more from me or work with me, I do have a few different options available in the description box below. You can enroll in my course. I have a course that has over 40 different classes, over 40 hours of teaching on astrology, herbalism, and plant-based living. It's called Astrology and Herbalism for Everyday Life, and you can enroll in that class in the description box below. I also have a book that is just over a year old, one of my best-selling books to date. The title of that book is Astrology in the Garden, and it's available on Amazon, also on my website, sahir7.com, and you can also order that book and read that in the description box below. It's a book that talks about how you can find the zodiac in the garden, also teaches you how to read charts, and a bunch of other things, how you can use astrology in your creative projects and in your relationships and so many other things. I'm really proud of that book, and it's been really well received, so you might want to read that. Or you can also enroll or sign up for a one-on-one consultation. I do offer one-on-one consultations that I do actually pull your natal chart, and we'll look at the natal chart, and that would be the foundation of the consultation, but it isn't necessarily like a natal chart reading. What I will do is take what I see in your life and basically use my lens and give you an analysis of a particular question or situation that you're going through on your life. And it will be based on your charts. I do need to have like the date of birth and time and things like that, but not your everyday natal chart consultation, more of a counseling session just based around your information. So if you enjoy the content that you find on my channel and you want to either learn more with me or work with me one-on-one, definitely check the description box below and check me out. All right, guys, so today I want to talk about trees. I'm not really on TikTok. I do have an account and I do share some things there, but I pulled up the app one day and found folks talking to trees, and I found this trend of people talking to trees, and I was like, that's really cool. I absolutely love seeing more and more humans talking about talking to trees, and so I wanted to do a pretty open video today about my experience with talking to trees, and about the way in which I see it, and just give my lens on tree talk. And it is going to be similar to some people that you hear, and it will be very different, I think, in comparison to many other things that you hear. I'm kind of sitting in the midst of a bunch of red ants in my garden, so I might be like shooing them and blowing them off of me, but they seem to be giving me space. Right as I said that, one bit my foot. He was like, we're here and maybe we won't give you space, but Oh, they're like, I think I'm going to move actually. Hold on. Okay, they were getting a little crazy actually. They had like covered my shoes totally, and they were starting to get a little bit nosy over there. So, a couple still left. So tree talk, that was a really cool trend that I noticed on TikTok, and I'm really happy that I came across some folks and multiple people, going up to trees, and they were saying something to the effect of, if you go to a tree and it blows by you as the tree blows behind, that they're talking to you or that they hear you. And I absolutely love that. I absolutely love anyone's perspective on communicating with the parts of life that tend to be seen as, disconnected from humans or separate from humans, like bugs and trees and plants and animals. And I absolutely love it. I actually recently purchased a Quran, because I heard and read that King Solomon, or Prophet Solomon in there, it was known as an insect communicator. And I wasn't raised in a religious way, and I'm pretty open to all of the different spiritual practices, but had not purchased a Quran or started to read one. But I had to, because my goodness, you have one of your prophets as Dr. Doolittle, kind of, understanding and teaching the interconnection of life and the ability to communicate to all of life. That's my kind of book. So that's what I want to talk about with y'all today, is tree talk and the ways in which I see it, the ways in which I want to teach about talking to trees, and a little bit about my own experience with them as well. All right, so my experience with talking to trees, it began almost about 10 years ago now, in the desert, actually, in a different part of the desert, but in the Sonoran Desert. We lived in a home that had, it was in an apartment, an upstairs apartment at that, and there was a tree that was hanging over our balcony. And this tree, my children would play with her every day, and I could feel some type of connection to this tree. But it wasn't until a sister came by my home, stopped by my home, and she walked in and said, you have a nosy tree over there, right? She said, that's a nosy tree that you have in there, looking all in your house and playing with your children. Have you talked to her? And I told my friend kind of quickly, like, no, and what are you talking about? And tell me more. And I've been feeling something with her, but I don't know how to talk to trees. And so she, explained to me what she did and how she did it, and that didn't really resonate with me. And so I said, you know what, okay, well, thanks for telling me what you feel, and I'm going to learn how to communicate with these beings. I had already been into food forestry and really gotten into gardening and studying trees and studying what I'm going to talk a lot about today, actually, with trees, in terms of what they do for the earth and for humans and how they interact on the earth. But I hadn't grown my own trees yet. And so the one-on-one daily experience was kind of limited. And I was in the early years of motherhood and was really overtaken by that experience. And so I started to go downstairs in the apartment complex and start trying to talk to this tree. It started with me just going up to her trunk and communicating outside, with a loud voice, like, hey tree, hey friend, I see you, I know you see us, you're like all up in our balcony and all up in our house, and my babies play with you, and I appreciate you, and thank you for letting my children play with your flowers, and thank you for providing shade for us in the summer sun. And initially my mind thought that perhaps I would hear something in my subconscious. Perhaps I would hear like a voice, or I would know, that she heard me. And it didn't happen like that right away. Matter of fact, I didn't hear anything from her ever, actually, from that tree. But I kept talking to her. and kept growing. And it came time for us to move. We actually were going to leave the desert and move to Oregon to a bunch of trees, because I did receive this download that it was time for us to move and go live by the big trees of the Pacific Northwest. And so when that time came, we picked a house to rent up there, and as soon as I saw the big trees, the big apple tree and plum tree growing on this property, I said, oh, that's definitely our house. And it just worked out to where that was where we moved. And so the very first day that I walked into that home, I walked through the backyard and out into the backyard, and there was this massive Douglas fir that was probably about 60 years old, that was growing on the property behind us, like catty corner behind us. And she was towering over our new backyard. And I walked out the back door, and as soon as I saw this tree, I had this knowingness, this intuitive awareness that this tree had something to tell me. And I had never experienced anything like that before, but it was the beginning of my talking to trees. And I think that it all began with my openness, with what I've been seeing folks on TikTok do. It just begins with you being open to tuning into their communication and to understanding them. And once you're open to it, there's a whole new world that will become available to you. So, what did I experience with that first tree? I think that from my own intuitive experience, I am a Pisces sun in tropical astrology. If you follow astrology, there's always going to be astrological information tied into almost everything that I talk about. It's just a part of my language. It's a part of the way that I see life. And if you read my book, Astrology in the Garden, you'll come to understand why. Astrology is a very earth-based awareness and a very earth-based knowledge. And so living in tune with the earth and living in alignment with plants, which is a big part of my life, it's very natural for me to use the language of astrology for me. So that will always be intertwined in here. And if it isn't something that you're interested in, I hope that you still listen anyways, because I am speaking about a lot more than just astrology. But I am a Pisces sun in tropical astrology, and Aquarius in sidereal and Vedic. And so I have a particular perspective that is based in a whole viewpoint. The viewpoint of the 11th and 12th house, or the 11th and 12th sign, is that of the totality and the interconnection of the totality. And so this is a very normal part of my experience here. And I think that, when it comes to communicating with trees, a lot of the times we are not thinking of the totality of the interconnected oneness of life on earth, and how all things on earth communicate, whether they're using English or Arabic or Swahili or light or sound or vibration to communicate. Communication is one of the foundational principles of life on earth, and all things are communicating with each other at all times. There's many different ways that we do this. Primarily, it's going to be through our sensory system, right? Every single being on earth, including the earth herself and the rocks and the dirt and the crystals and minerals that are growing, are sensory beings. We all have senses, and it is hard for people to think of a rock as having senses. But have you ever touched a rock and felt it, and felt the vibration from minerals and from crystals? They're very real, and you can actually feel them. And so all life is a sensory experience. And when you recognize that all life has this sameness, this similarity, you can begin to communicate with any of life. And that's why, the story of Dr. Dolittle is such a regular story of of time throughout cultures, there's always been communication about someone who can communicate with animals or plants or the dead or whatever. It's because life is a frequency, it's a vibrational experience. And so that vibration is communicative in order to create. That's the only way that creation takes place, is through the communication of different vibes. And we know that from things like the rainbow and so many things. And I have talked about things like that on this channel in other videos, and will continue to talk about them in the future. But this is the mutable energy of life, this ever-changing, fluid, moving energy of life. I like to think of it as in terms of like astrological mutable. And there are 4 mutable signs that are associated to or with astrology, or associated with mutability in astrology. And so I am going to use those 4 different signs, and I'm going to connect the talking to trees to those 4 different signs in this video. And the first one is going to be the Pisces, because that first tree that I just knew had a message for me. I believe what happened is I entered into her auric field, into her aura, into her field of energy pulsing around her. I entered into it. And when I came into it, I was able to sense and pick up on, because of personal experiences, which I might talk more in detail about, certain spinal kundalini experiences I had a few months before, and the birth of my 3rd child, and really all my children. But there were things that happened in my life that prepared me for this time. But I wasn't necessarily special in her message. She didn't have like a special message for me. She was just vibrating out information. And when I entered her auric field, when I entered her emotional, energetic body, when I entered her water field, right, the literal field of where the mist of her was surrounding her body, like I literally entered that field, I was able to pick up on the information that she had available in that field. And the message was, or the information was, something is getting ready to happen, and I didn't know what it was. And so I paid attention to this tree, and I watched her every day, and I talked to her every day, and I introduced all of my friends to her. And I knew that I knew she was going to be sharing something with me. Longer story short, I got the message about, so I guess about 7 months later. Well, actually, no. So about 5 months later, 4 or 5 months later, I walk out that same backyard door, and I come out the door, and I see a black body bag being pulled out of that tree's house, that back door of that tree. So that tree is on the property behind us, and there's a little blue house there. And outside of the back door of that house was a body bag being rolled out of the house by the corner. And I was like, oh my God, is that what you knew was going to happen? You knew that the owner of your home actually ended up being the man who actually planted her 60 years earlier, was going to die. And she foresaw the death of this friend of hers, this man who gave her life and who she lived with in her auric field, and she lived in his auric field for 60 years. And I was really taken aback, actually. Like, wow, like that was what I had felt. I had felt this message that she had. And so I thought that was the end of it. But a couple months later, my girlfriend came. It was actually on New Year's Eve of that year. My girlfriend came and said, do you know that they're going to cut down your tree, friend? And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, they're going to cut down your tree, friend. They sold that old guy's house, that old man's house, the deceased brethren's house, to a developer. And the developer is going to cut down the tree and build 2 houses on that lot and split the lot up. And For the next month and a half, I spent many days writing to the developer, calling the developer, and begging him really to not cut down the tree. Because I had this feeling that I was meant to help save her, and a human idea of what her message was. Obviously, continually, she knew her days and her friends' days were numbered. That tree did end up getting cut down the day after an extremely traumatic event happened in my own personal life. And I watched these brown men cut this tree down, branch by branch, inch by inch, a massive tree in the middle of a very suburban community, like house after house after house. It was one of the most powerful things I've ever witnessed. But this was the first experience I had with communicating with a tree and understanding the communication, right? So we're all in the auric field. I'm in the auric field of these trees right now. They're in my auric field. We're exchanging energy and frequency. And in the current moment, I don't hear anything that I don't have any essence or energy or awareness of communication or messages or information that they're sharing. They probably feel that I'm talking about them, though. They probably know that I'm talking about them though. but I don't have any awareness of it, and that is a reality of life. We are all always within each other's auric field, but there isn't always going to be an awareness of that because it is a very subtle experience. And when you are asking for the awareness of the subtle fields and the subtle energies of life and the subtle ways, and you are paying attention to, and you are living in like conscious connection with these things because of lifestyle and maybe current habits. Maybe you're writing a lot, or you're journaling, or you're doing a lot of poetry, or you're walking in forests a lot, or you're meditating a lot, doing a lot of yoga, which meditation and yoga were things that I was doing heavily before this happened. You might open up a portal of awareness to where you can tune into the information that they always are sharing, because this tree does have information that she's sharing right now. She's putting out information, data, valuable data to the entire garden, and letting people know about pests, and letting them know about me, and letting them know about the sun and the heat and all of the different things that are happening, because trees are communicators and they communicate in many different ways. The first way that I want to make sure I mention is the auric field, the actual energy presence outside and around a being, and it tends to be associated to me to the element of water and to the essence of Pisces. Pisces is oftentimes associated to the mist and to the energy of the in-between here and there. Mist you can see, but you can't touch it, you can't grab it, but it's obviously there. And this is the energy of Piscean energy, or this is the energy of the Pisces, or of the 12th house of Neptune. Something that we know is there, but you can't quite put your hands on it. And that is the spiritual realm, right? That is the realm of the before. That is the realm that creates all of the physical things that we can touch. And it is the most challenging realm to understand or to comprehend. I give thanks for being born during that time where evaporation is happening and the mist is very relevant in the development of the beings at that time, because it does make sense to me. And I'll talk more. I want to actually do some videos just about my perspective of Piscean energy, because I think that you get definitely a different, you get a different discussion when you're getting it from a Pisces directly. But that's the first way I wanted to talk about trees communicating. It's the auric field, and it's the very first experience that I had. I then decided to plant a food forest garden there, and I ended up planting a self-sustaining food forest garden in our backyard. It was actually already planted once that tree went down. But the work had kind of like just kicked in really too when she went down that winter. And a food forest garden, which is what I'm sitting in here now, is a self-sustaining system. It's based on trees and perennial plants. You can actually see a lot of shade structures around me now because we are in the desert and it gets really, really hot here. And so it's a self-sustaining food system that is based on perennial plants, which are plants that grow back on their own every year without the need of you replanting them, that are food-bearing plants that are acclimated to the desert or whatever environment you're in. At that point, I was in the Pacific Northwest, so it wasn't desert plants. That create a self-sustaining ecosystem, right? So there's something really special about what I've done here, and I'm gonna put the camera to the ground because it's all about these wood chips here. You see these wood chips all around me. These wood chips are emulating a forest floor. And if you've ever went hiking in a forest, or you've lived near a forest, or you're in a forest right now as you're watching this, if you look on the ground, you will notice that you don't see any dirt, very little dirt anywhere. What you see is a bunch of old decaying leaves and woods, pieces of wood and sticks and stems and logs and dead animals and dead bugs and poop and I shouldn't have did that with my face when I said poop and poop because it's a beautiful thing, honestly. Um, Death, it's the circle of life. Life grows up from the earth or from the womb. It grows up, it goes through its maturation cycle, and then it dies back down to the earth. And when it dies down to the earth, it releases the minerals of its life. This is something that I go into detail in the book Astrology in the Garden and in my class as well. When it releases those minerals become available for the next generation to absorb up and to reuse to grow their bodies. And so a a forest becomes and is a sustainable system because it has its own self regenerative process of the circle of life. So when you want to plant a regenerative food system, a regenerative garden, if you create or recreate that which a forest is and put food-bearing plants that are acclimated to your environment in your garden, you come to have a really amazing, magical, self-sustaining ecosystem that will produce you food that you don't actually have to replant every year. You just get to go out there and pick it. There are some rules about doing this, and I'll be actually recording a new class in the second half of this year and next year on planting a food forest garden because I do have some experience with that, and I like to help more women especially, but more people know how to actually do the work and how to build these systems because they are true solutions to real issues that we have in our world now and in the future. I was planting a food forest garden, and I began to become a part of a self-sustaining food system and a self-sustaining ecosystem. And an ecosystem is a really interesting thing. The plants around this time, actually a little bit before this, gave me this message that all ecosystems are built around three principles. It's the Holy Trinity. And you can actually you can actually go into many different languages and many different types of expression and discuss this Holy Trinity in many different ways. But one of the ways that we can discuss the Holy Trinity of an ecosystem is between three different words: interdependence, diversity, and nourishment. All ecosystems require these three principles. Every ecosystem is interdependent. All of the beings, all of the species, the crawlers, the growers, the trees, the walkers, the flyers, the diggers, plants and animals and humans and anyone that's there alike are all interdependent upon each other. Without one portion of the ecosystem, the rest of the ecosystem won't work out. And this is true for all things on life, all ecosystems on life, or on earth, including within our body. Like the cell is an interdependent being, creation, everything. So the only way that this works, the only way that interdependence works is through diversity. Everyone has to be different. Everyone has to be different. And so when you go into a forest, you will find a lot of the same types of plants, like nursery trees, which we're going to talk about here in a few moments. You'll tend to find 3 of the same types of trees and 3 to 4 different of the same types of trees in every forest. And they're known as nursery trees, and they do really, really well in that climate and actually create the environment so that everyone else can survive. But there's so much diversity. Everybody there is so different, and they have to be different because in order to be interdependent, in order to depend on one another, you can't all be the same. You have to be different. It is a necessity. And so diversity is a requirement, and the second requirement to any healthy ecosystems that survive. The third is nourishment. And so in these interdependent, diverse relationships where everybody's working together, what is happening is that everyone is nourishing each other, and mostly in their death. It is mostly in the death of the previous year's life that the next generation, or the next year, or the next wave of life will receive nourishment. And it's in this nourishment that the interdependent relationships are able to maintain, that the diversity is able to maintain, and that the system stays regenerative and sustainable. And so when I planted my first food forest garden, I became a part of this ecosystem. I became a part of this regenerative community of beings that nourished each other, and I was being nourished by them as well. Yes, through the food and the medicine, and through just the good times and the time that I would spend there. But I also became a part of their network of communication and of exchange, and began to become nourished through their actual communication. And when it comes to the food forest garden, obviously I was in their auric fields, but I want to bring our attention to below the dirt, to underneath the actual forest floor. And you can tell here I actually need to put some more. It's a little bit, you can see the mud there, so I need to actually get way more wood chips on my walkway here, but step by step. If we go underneath the ground, and especially in an established food forest that has a lot of decaying matter on the ground, we find something that a lot of people are calling nowadays the wood-wide network. Instead of the worldwide network, the wood-wide network. And it is an underground world of beings that connect together, that live in connection together, just like the sky, just like the ants, like the bees, like human societies and human beings. They interconnect together underneath the earth and communicate and share resources and share information and share oxygen and everything. It's absolutely amazing. Primarily, this is done through the root systems, as well as through an organism that we call mycelium. Mycelium is the birth or the parent of mushrooms. Mushrooms actually grow from mycelium. And it's this white stringy substance or creation being that is able to, because of its own physical structures, it's able to actually grow through root systems. And as it grows through these root systems, it communicates its information, its data, its knowledge with the plant. It interconnects the different plants' root systems. So if it's going through tree A and tree B and tree C, now all three of those trees are hearing the same messages and are connected together into the same information field. They're also sharing nutrients. So if tree A has an excess amount of, let's just say, water, and tree B has an excess amount of, let's say, nitrogen, and tree C needs both, the mycelium will help interconnect these three plants to a way where they will actually share these resources. And this is how trees do it, and they've been doing it like this since the beginning. And so when I planted this food forest garden, I became aware of this wood-wide network. I was actually touching it and digging it, and I was the one who built it. I actually brought the wood chips into the earth, or onto that part of the earth, so that it could be developed. And because of that, I was given kind of like a front row seat at how these friends of mine, they always miss that garden, grew together, and how they did life, and how they became a sustainable ecosystem. Because it's all about interdependence. It's all about depending on one another to for everyone to do what they do best, and to bring their best skills to the table, to the party, and to do their best work. And as everybody shows up as their diverse individual beings and does their best work, then here comes the sustainability. And so this underground network, I relate to the energy of Gemini, the next mutable sign that I want to talk about just for a moment. Gemini is the sign of Mercury, of Wednesday, and of the sign of communication. We know, if you know a Gemini, and I actually have Gemini in my 10th house, so I have a lot of Gemini energy in me, especially when I do things like this. Gemini can talk about almost everything at a drop of the dime, and will have so much to say, so many facts and so much knowledge, because Gemini is representative of that wood-wide or worldwide network of this interconnective neuron based network, this ability to like absorb and know all the knowledge around it and use it, at least to communicate it. And so I represent, or I connect this underground network to the energy of Gemini, the second mutable sign. There are 4 mutable signs. The third, and actually I've already kind of mentioned the other 2 as well in this because it's all one big story, but the third mutable sign that I want to talk about today is Virgo. And Virgo is the sign of the caretaker, of the server. And everything really that I've been talking about in terms of the food forest and of trees is in alignment with service, is in alignment with beings being okay with and showing up for one another. These ants are all over the place, which I do not mind. As a matter of fact, I love them. But I'm going to put a little water right here because they must want me to stop talking. Which, you know what? You need to share the garden, little friends. Like, I'd be out here. I don't sit much on the wood chips directly, and they must just not really want to be having it today, but hello. This is my home too. They just keep nicking me. Okay. Watering the mercury or the rosemary behind me. It smells so good. Rosemary is good for the brain. Let's see. Can you all see her back here? I don't think you can really see her. This is our rosemary plant here, and my goodness, she smells so good. Really good for your hair. Actually will help darken your hair. If you're like going gray, you can actually use rosemary to help darken the hair. Great for the brain and for the mind, and is really a plant in alignment with Gemini energy. But Virgo, let's move on to Virgo. I have Virgo rising in tropical astrology, and so I know a lot about this, the energy and the willingness to serve. It can be even almost overwhelming for Virgo energy, because the desire to show up for others and to serve. Oh, look at that mycelium right there. Let's see if I can show you guys this. Got some mycelium right here. Hopefully you can see that. This little white stringy stuff is mycelium. That is mycelium. The desire for Virgo to show up and serve, let me cover this back up so you can survive, is overwhelming. And it is because Virgo is the energy that comes onto the earth, or into the ecosystem of the earth during the time of the big seasonal change of summer to fall. And you know what? When the sun is starting to disappear, you need really wise, high integrity characters that are flexible and mutable and capable of change to come in and help walk you through the fall of the sun. Because when that sun leaves, it is no joke. It's a beast, and it's Virgo that shows up to make sure that everything in the world is well, in the northern hemisphere, whatever hemisphere we're at the time, is in alignment, so that we can all deal with the fall of the sun, and as many of us can survive as possible. And trees are very much in alignment with this Virgoan energy of service and of caretaking and of showing up for others, because trees literally are caretakers. That's what they do. You're going to first get plants like weeds, and I'm going to do one of these talks all on weeds, but you first get plants like weeds that come in, and the weeds come in and they start to cover the ground, and they start to create a ground cover, and they start to build nutrients, so that the trees can start growing. Once the trees start growing, the trees kind of take over and the weeds kind of subside. The trees will grow up. They will slowly bring an environment that can actually support other life underneath them, right? So like the reason why I had to put this shade structure over here is because this apple tree, and you can't see an orange tree is behind there, and this little bitty fig tree here are too small to protect the little blueberry bushes that I have back here, and this is a boysenberry vine here, and this is a bunch of cowpeas, and that jasmine vine, actually she didn't make it, she died, so that's kind of sad. But the trees aren't big enough to actually support that this ecosystem over here, this part of the ecosystem. They're not providing shade yet. And so I had to create a shade structure for these plants because the sun in the Sonoran Desert is no joke. And between the hours of like 11 and 2 or 3, it is like a literal laser beam just like zeroing in. And so I had to help them out because the trees aren't big enough to do it yet. But once those trees are big enough, they will create a canopy here that will allow so much different life and so many different plants and bugs and animals and birds to survive here on the ground, no matter how hot it is above in the sky. And this is one of the primary, uses of trees. And when you start to recognize this, right, when you start to recognize that, wow, so like trees are literal like caretakers. They love everyone that lives below them. They have a goal of growing up tall to create a canopy to protect plants that don't need as much sun from the sun. You start to live in alignment with the motherly energy of trees, of the Virgo maiden, of the energy of this this self-sacrificial mother type of an energy that is another major form and level of awareness that we can interconnect with to communicate with trees. Their unconditional lovingness, the loving ways of trees, is a frequency that you can tune into and that you can use to build a closer relationship and a closer bond with trees. They are selfless beings, and they're selfless because they do begin out as selfish beings, and that's going to be the final mutable sign we talk about. But as they grow and as they become established on their own, they become selfless beings. And this is another way in which you can learn to communicate, and you can open your heart and your senses to hearing the communication. And this might be just recognizing that every year trees drop all of their leaves, well, deciduous trees drop all of their leaves to cover the earth so that the next generation of life can grow. When you live in honor and reverence for this magical but so basic and simple, subtle yet cosmic, universal, life-sustaining but so regular process, you almost come to your knees in honor and in respect, and you become an aid to the trees, and you become an ally to the trees, and they feel you, and they receive your support, and they recognize your commitment and your level of awareness, and they will respond accordingly. They will communicate with you. They will open up. They will help you hear them and help you find the connections in the ways that that's what you're hearing. Absolutely magical. And yet the most basic way we've been living on earth, if you look into tribal communities, there's one consistent message that tribal communities say. They say that they'll ask them, well, how did you know to use this plant or use that tree? And they'll say, well, the tree told us. Well, the plant told us. Hello. Like, so obvious. Like, hello, the plant told us. How else would I know to use that plant and how to use it other than the plant told us? That is what our ancestors did when they lived under these trees, and they lived in these systems, and they lived in full respect for all of the steps of their lifespan, of their life cycle, of the yearly cycle of these plants. The plants welcomed them, and the plants felt them. They could feel their aura, and they shared deep messages with them, consistently things that will help them survive. They shared nourishment with them because they were a part of the interdependent system. And the trees could tell, well, these diverse beings are different than us. This is the type of help they need. We're going to provide it to them, because trees are caretakers and they are lovers and they're mothers and some of my favorite friends on the earth. And there's one way that they get to this point. And that is the beginning of the interdependent word. And I like to write interdependent when I'm speaking of this 3-point message with a capital I with parentheses around it. I actually wrote it here in my little notes that you can see. It's backwards for you, of course, but interdependent, and it's with a capital I with parentheses around it. And of course, that's my own little way of writing this word. But what does that mean? Well, it means that interdependence is based on the individual being able to grow in a very sustainable, strong, individual pathway. And it really begins in the energy of Aries in the spring. If you watch a new plant grow back up from Aries season in the springtime, that plant grows with such a fervor to survive and such a commitment and dedication to its own survival that it can be known as a selfishness. Aries energy is oftentimes associated to selfishness. But in order to know selflessness, the Piscean energy, you have to know selfishness, and even the Virgo Pisces axis of selflessness. You have to first begin with selfishness. And this is even the energy of the baby, right? A newborn baby cries and cries and cries no matter how tired his mom or her mom is, because it needs what it needs to survive, and it knows how to get it. And it gets it through the selfish nature of the Aries, of the energy of Aries. The fourth mutable sign, though, that I want to communicate here about is with Sagittarius, because trees are at a very high level of selfishness. They're not so much at the baby level of Aries, they're more so at the higher level of Sagittarius, the fire sign of high knowledge, the fire sign of action taking and self-awareness and self-serving, moving forward type energy, but in a very high conscious realm. All of the signs have the ability and the awareness of high consciousness, of course. But Sagittarius is actually known as the seer, as the one or the sign that is the first sign that becomes aware that there's something really different going on here. That yes, survival of the fittest, and well, not necessarily in the Darwinian sense, but that survival based on securing of resources and interdependence, the focus of the self, and the best energy put forth for self survival. Those things are really important. Yes, reproduction is really important, but do y'all know that there is this field of existence, this auric field? Sagittarius becomes aware of this unseen realm for the first time. Do y'all know that there is this unseen realm that's actually creating the entire seen realm? Saggy is like, yo, like, we need to dig into that and we need to study that. And so that big beautiful eucalyptus up there, she provides us shade in the wintertime. And so this is the fourth mutable sign, and this is the energy of the interdependence of each tree and each plant. And it's another way in which we can live in alignment with, and we can tune into the messages of the plants and of the trees, and that we can talk to trees and communicate with trees and understand their communication. Because yes, every single tree is here to live its own life in its own life path. It has a very specific genetic imprint within it, and that is what it is here to fulfill. And in that individual genetic imprint comes the message of work in unison, work with everyone else around you, because no tree wants to be on this earth alone, no being wants to be on this earth alone. But if each tree and each being is not self-sufficient and is not rooted in its own self awareness and its own genetic purpose, then the whole system is weakened. And so this is the higher awareness of what it means to be an interdependent ecosystem. Is yes, we're all here to help out and work together. But if I'm not good, I can't really do anything good for you. And that's where I've come to in my life, where I've actually kind of gotten down the other portions of tree communication a little bit better. Being a Piscean, selfishness is a little bit harder for me, and serving of self is a more challenging commitment. And I am being forced now, after 12 years of being a mother and of the most sacrificial days of my life, I am being forced within and to committing to becoming a fully self sustaining being and fully fulfilling my own genetic purpose within myself so that I can be the strongest tree in my ecosystem, whatever ecosystem I'm in, that I possibly can be. And I know that I have many more lessons yet to come from the trees, and that I have many more experiences that are going to just blow my mind that are coming. And that's really exciting, to be honest with you, because sometimes when you have a lot of deeply spiritual experiences with the earth, and I want to talk about many of them here with you because they've been pretty amazing for me. You almost kind of miss them, like, when's the next one gonna happen? And I won't lie, I definitely am kind of in that point right now of life where, like, you know, I can't wait until the next one comes. And so I know they're coming because I'm a growing, changing individual, and I'm not dead. So of course more are coming, but I am further learning how to live in alignment with the ways that trees live, and learning how to communicate with them better and tune into their world more efficiently every day of my life. And, yeah, this is what I wanted to add into the world of talking to trees. I absolutely love that people are doing this, and that this is becoming more of a popular culture type of phenomenon. Keep talking to them, keep asking them, keep letting them know that you see them. Feel the embrace of their auric field, respect and honor, and tell other people about their intellect and about the massive neurological system that exists under the ground that they communicate in and learn through, and serve your brethren and your sistren with the same commitment that they serve each other in their ecosystems with, and show up for those in your community in the same way, and tell them thank you every time you freaking see a tree. Tell them thank you every fall that those leaves fall down to the earth and cover the earth for the next layer of topsoil. Say thank you, trees. Praise the trees. Get to your knees and praise them. And this isn't about praising the creation and not the creator. I know a lot of religious people struggle with this. The creator is no separate from the creation, and anyone who thinks that is not in tune. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I want to invite you to explore a more natural, nature-based depth of awareness of creation. The creator is the creation manifest, and to honor and praise the creation is honoring and praising the creator. There is no separation from creator and creation other than the physical separation, but energetically it is all the same. There's only one God, and all people of all religions would confirm there's only one God. So guess who created everything? That one God. This is all the creation of God, of whatever word you use to describe the source. And it is that source's work. Praise my children. Praise my children. You're praising me. You're praising my work. Whether you ever acknowledge me or not, it is obvious that I was the one who created them. So anyways, that's what I wanted to discuss today, and that was the message that I wanted to share with you all today, is talking to trees, tree talk. All beings communicate, and I have a lot more to say about many other types of communication, but when it comes to trees, open your heart, and learn the final message: how to live in your true center, the nous of existence, the spiritual core, the neutral center part, God, your God body, your auric field, your God body. Learn how to be as true to that being as you possibly can, and express your purpose in the most powerful or subtle, whatever feels right to you ways, and show up as that person the best that you can every single day. And as you grow up through your own center core and you continue to extend into the heavens and you continue to extend into the ethers and you become that individual I, closer and closer with every step, we will continue to live more in alignment with these trees. We will hear their messages and we will bring the ancient knowledge of our ancestors back, and we will bring it into the future, because the past will always go forward with us. And there are those of us here who are trying to talk to trees. It's our job, actually. It's what we're here to do, is to bring the knowledge of the past with us into the future. And so I honor you and I celebrate your work. And I look forward to communicating with you through the ethers of the Tree Talk. So until next time, y'all, peace.